What up, everyone? Welcome to episode 9 of the Daily Commute Show, presented by FYS Sports Debates, where we hold the best sports debates on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, whatever platform we have. We are the top source for the best sports news, debates, and opinions from all different perspectives. I am your host, Abil Mahari, known as MehariNation Sports Podcast. And if you want to hear more of my commentary on the sports and world news, subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on Instagram under the name MehariNation23. If you are new to the FYS Sports Debates channel, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, this podcast. This is a platform where we host heated sports debates with our listeners, present factual evidence, and challenge mainstream narratives. We're not here to disrespect athletes or listeners who have different opinions, but present the evidence and challenge the accepted narratives. All you need is an open mind. In this episode here, we're going to discuss about the NBA civil war between the old school and the new school version of basketball. Now, when we discuss about the old school and new school, we're discussing about how many of these new generation basketball players and many of these NBA retired players have various perspectives on each other. Now, the reason why we're discussing about this subject is because 2 weeks ago, when NBA legend Jerry West responded back to some strong comments made by former NBA player and ESPN analyst JJ Redick way back in April. Now, for those listeners who don't know who Redick is, you could pretty much say that he's one of the greatest shooters in college basketball history when he played at Duke University. But this is a man that played for 6 different NBA teams in 19 seasons. But where his name was made great is when he played for Duke University as one of the greatest players in the program's history. And to this day, holds the NCAA record for most career three-point field goals with 457 made threes, and currently is the ACC's all-time leading scorer. Now, as I've referenced this before, this goes back into April when Redick was on ESPN First Take debating against Chris Mad Dog Radio of New York on the revolution of NBA point guards. Now, this is where things got a little bit heated, and Redick said some questionable things to some listeners. I'm going to leave that up to you. But here's what he had to say when in regards to talking about legendary Celtics point guard Bob Cousy. He pretty much stated the fact that he couldn't dribble left and mostly played against players who were quote-unquote plumbers and firemen. Now, after hearing those kind of comments, obviously Bob Cousy responded back with his own statements, of course, the next month. But it was on an interview on Sirius XM NBA radio where Jerry West responded back to those comments when he said, and quote, JJ is a very smart man and everything. But tell me, what does his career look like? What did he do? What did he do that determined gains? He averaged 12 points a game in this league. Somewhere along the way, numbers don't count. JJ wasn't going to guard elite players, so you can nitpick anyone. The only reason I'm talking about him is because he was not an elite player, but he was a very good player. But he had the place on the team because of his ability to shoot the ball. West said in that same interview that Redick and today's players should appreciate the old guard of the NBA players who helped build the foundation of this league. Now, this is something that has been pretty much brewing, not just this subject alone, obviously, but obviously that this is a type of subject that's been brewing for, I don't know, for years, for a decade, however you want to put it. I mean, this has been kind of a subject that has been going around circles in all different sports. You name it, the NFL, the NBA, MLB, NHL, tennis, golf. Doesn't matter. You're always going to have these kind of debates between the old school guard and the new school guard. And somewhere along the line, there's always going to be either some middle ground or one side's always there's going to be the correct side and the other one's not, and vice versa. Now, here's where I stand in this situation here. And you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you right here, right now. Both of these men are actually correct. Now, why do I say that? It's because the fact that both these guys are parts of different generations of the NBA. Redick, of course, is from the early 2000s, where the NBA game was already evolving and changing into the game that you see today, where it's requiring more shooting, more of playmaking from point guards. All right. It's a different game than it was back then, right? But when we talk about the old school way of things, These old school guys have built the foundation of the NBA to what we see today. And to that, I understand where Jerry West is coming from in defending, guys like Bob Cousy, guys like himself, Oscar Robertson, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, those kind of guys that helped build the foundation of the NBA. And don't forget, we have to also mention guys that started the NBA too. Guys like the first superstar in George Mikan, Dolph Shays. Those players were really the guys that really helped solidify the foundation of basketball. But also, they went through a lot of sacrifices along the way to help establish the NBA. Now, when I was in the middle of organizing the script, I wanted to research about the salary structure in the NBA back then compared to what it is now. Obviously, we already know that the NBA produces billions and billions of dollars now. But when you rewind all the way back to you can say between the 40s through the 70s, right? During the late 50s, most salary structures were around $12,000 at the highest. Some of them were making even less than that. And there were a lot of guys back then that no matter how talented they were, a lot of them weren't making the big time bucks that you see today in professional sports. So yeah, there were a lot of guys that pretty much had to work second jobs, to make ends meet, just like me and you. You know what I mean? And keep this in mind. This is something that former late great Celtic Tom Heinsohn even touched upon about it, 8 years ago, when he talked about the fact that when the NBA was developing its players association through Bob Cousy, the NBA presented no pension plan, any health benefits, or minimum wage provisions. So pretty much when NBA owners back then felt like that you were not expendable, or you had no use for his organization or whatever, they could just kick you out with a bad habit and just leave you pit dry, right? So the other thing that we have to also consider the fact that a lot of these old guys were really the guys that really helped shape free agency to what you see today. And what I'm talking about is the famous court case going back into the 19s, back to the early, between the 70s and between the 60s and the 70s, when Hall of Famer Oscar Robertson, pretty much challenged the narrative of free agency and took it by storm. Now, what we're talking about here, I'm basically talking about the Oscar Robertson rule. And what that really pretty much did was it changed the balance of power in professional sports, where the process of making NBA players or even all athletes into multimillionaires, and where billionaires are pretty much had to start spending out the money to keep their players, right? So when we talk about the Oscar Robertson rule, it was pretty much a class action antitrust file lawsuit against the NBA and its 14 other teams back in April of 1970. All right. Now, before that lawsuit was instituted, remember, Bob Cousy, the guy what we talked about earlier, he was the guy that helped solidify and create the National Basketball Players Association, and it was the first sports labor union in the modern era. And Oscar Robertson was the first antitrust lawsuit in professional basketball. More significantly, at the time, black players were still a minority in the NBA. And Oscar Robertson in 1965 became the first African-American president of any national sport or entertainment labor union. So when he filed the lawsuit, here was a black man in a star sport putting his own career on the line by standing up to the professional sports establishment into basically allowing the players to decide where they want to go, to what team they want to choose, and what offer that they can pretty much ask of the owners that you need to give them in order to sign with their respective teams. Back then, it was the owners that can pretty much offer the player the contract, and if the player didn't accept it, the owner can just pretty much void the contract altogether and not use you. That lawsuit changed everything in the NBA, because by that time, Oscar Robertson proved his point that the players have the right to choose where they want to go, and pretty much can demand what type of salary that they thought to seek fit. And on April 29th of 1976, the NBA, which already by that time already had 18 teams, pretty much agreed to the class action settlement and pretty much changed the balance of power in professional sports. Players had now more leverage in dealing with the owners, and then later on in the decades to follow, The MLB and the NFL and also the NHL followed suit as well. This was created as known as the Oscar Robertson rule, which meant eliminating the option or the reserve clause in the player's NBA player's contract, which bounds a player to one team for life at a team's option, and was the first step towards unrestricted free agency. Now, why is this important? It's because what you see in the NBA today, where star players get to put in player option clauses in their contract, which states that even if the contract is run for like 5 years, they could also have a player option deal at any given point that can pretty much opt themselves out of that contract and become a free agent and decide where they want to go. And that lawsuit was extremely important. And the reason why I bring this up is because unfortunately, not a lot of new school sports fans have an understanding of why NBA free agency is so big now. Because now these players have the opportunity and also have the power to decide where they want to go and how much money that they're going to demand out of these owners now. It's a complete different scenario and a different type of field than it was back then. And we have to appreciate the old players like the Oscar Robertson, the Bob Cousy's, and the Jerry West that were willing to fight against these owners to try to create more opportunities for the next generation of players, and it paid off in a major way. So, but when regards to basically, how this ties into that whole civil war between the old school and the new school is a lot of times the old school has a bit of a resentment in the fact that a lot of these new school players and fans, they don't have an understanding of how difficult it was for them back then to try to get any level of attention or demand any level of salary to try to make themselves a decent living. And the new school generation has a bit of resentment in the fact that a lot of these old players have not changed and adapt their own way of thinking. And unfortunately, as a result, they become out of touch. Now, if you ask me, both of these sides have legitimate points. But at the end of the day, it's all about how you interpret that. Now, as far as what JJ Redick had to say, there was some truth about what he said. But the way that he kind of presented that in his debate with Russo did come across as very disingenuous, probably just more disingenuous indeed. Because if he decided to pretty much make an argument that, listen, we respect Bob Cousy what he was as a basketball player. He was one of the great guards of his time and really helped solidify the players union in the NBA to where now they have representation now. You know what I mean? And I just think that his game today wouldn't work out very well. Maybe it would have been much more of an understandable argument and it wasn't trying to take a shot at him. But because he was in the heat of the moment of a debate and made those referencing comments about plumbers and firemen as NBA players back in those days, it really rubbed off the old school fans the wrong way. And unfortunately, you got the responses to what you got from Cousy and from Jerry West. And keep in mind, Jerry West is the logo here. Don't forget that. And remember one thing too, Jerry West is still the only player in NBA Finals history to win the Finals MVP for the losing team. Remember, the Finals MVP was not instituted until 1969. All right. And he's still the only player to win the Finals MVP for the losing side. So I do get where a lot of the old school fans can have a little bit of a side-eyed when it comes to these kind of debates. But keep in mind in this perspective, this happens a lot in sports. You have baseball players from the old school way that does not like a lot of the showboating, a lot of the pizzazz and fancy substance from these new school players. But keep in mind, Ricky Henderson was doing a lot of those things back then that pretty much set up the new school mentality. But what we have to keep in mind is that we are in a different era now, where things are a bit different than what they were back then. But it doesn't mean where we don't have to disrespect, the old school guard and what they did for the NBA players or for the MLB players or the NFL players or the NHL players and what they had to sacrifice for the new generation of today. What I'm trying to tell you guys is that both of these guys need to have a much more better understanding and have much more of an appreciation of how sports has become now. And I really think that Jerry West was just speaking on the behalf of the old school breed. And I just think that, JJ Redick could have phrased it a bit better, but it was in the heat of the moment. And I think Redick is smart enough to know not to say those kind of things. But keep in mind, he works for a network in ESPN, where those kind of statements are the ones that draw the most ratings, or most of the YouTube channels or any other channel, from that matter, from different forums, will take a lot of their talking points and try to make a lot of their own assessments and take a lot of their own stances and create their own narratives about how they view things. For me, I just keep it in between. Listen, there wasn't no wrong side or right side in this case. It's just a matter of how you view it and how you interpret the argument. And I just think that both these sides, have some interesting points. But I just think that JJ Redick, to me, could have phrased it a little bit better. And I think this is where I kind of favor Jerry West in terms of what his sentiment is. But at the end of the day, you can always respect where generations come from and a lot of different things. But you just have to be careful of how you phrase it, because a lot of people can phrase things very badly, and it just comes across very, very badly. And I just think that's where kind of JJ Redick kind of blew the mark in terms of that, what he was trying to interpret. But, hey, this is why we're here. This is why we have, shows like, the Daily Commute Show presented by FYS Sports Debates. Go subscribe to our channel, of course. This is why we're here, because we want to have, healthy dialogue and allow you as a listener to really much express your opinion on the matter without having to go through, heated arguments where people would, shout each other at the throat and say insulting things. This is not what we're here for. What we're here is to try to give you guys a different type of perspective and give you guys a different type of a viewpoint, and then let you guys decide how you want to take it and run with it. So I'm really interested about how you guys, look at the whole entire, argument. Do you believe that JJ Redick was right? Or do you agree with, with Jerry West's assessment? Or do you agree with both sides? Or do you guys have a different opinion on the matter? Because I'm really interested into hearing what you guys think about it. So always feel free to, give a like, and also just comment it. Feel free to, give your opinion about it, but be very, very articulate and establish what your point is and how all those things combine to what the point is. All right. So let me know what you guys think. I'm really interested in your thoughts about this civil war between the old school and the new school version of NBA basketball. But I really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Daily Commute Show right here on FYS Sports Debates. You know what I mean? Obviously, this is your host, Abil Mehari, represent MehariNation Sports Podcast. Go ahead and check out my YouTube channel, where I pretty much give you guys all the unfiltered stuff on sports and daily news and a lot of different opinionated stuff. But this has been another great episode of the Daily Commute Show, and I hope you guys enjoyed it while you were at work or on your break or driving your car, whatever you are doing. I hope you basically enjoyed this episode and look forward to the next one. Peace out, everyone.
Talking like you really bad at it's internet. FY Sports in the colors to minute, man. Talking about sports and debates, how'd your feelings? Yeah, lace up the kids, cause we stepping on next to him. Number one sports debate, know that we killing it, always 100. So stay on my Benjamin, fearing no man, cause my God about the business. Yeah, Kwame and Ticket, we pray for the sinners. Yeah, want all the smoke, but be acting like kids again. FYF gang, and you know we don't switch on that talk on the line, but you won't ever mention me, claiming we folks, but you trying to go dissing me. I am a dog, came for the streets, feel like I'm weight, cause I'm feeling the heat. All of my subs, they know they peeps. Here's a debate.